Welcome to Horror Bois. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris.
And Isaiah.
And being joined for the first time ever by
Other Chris.
I like it. I like the commitment,
like
Other
it.
Chris. That is now his official
So he
name
shall
on the
stay.
podcast.
Yeah.
Now the handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not just any podcast on the internet, though. We are a horror movie review podcast where once a week we pick a horror movie and we review. I say we pick. I pick, and I make a schedule, and they deal with it. And currently we are going over the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. And we are now, this week, going to be covering the 2017 prequel to the original, but in the continuity of Texas Chainsaw 3D film, Leatherface. Because this is the most convoluted continuity in all of horror.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I'll start with the, little information I like to start with, which is, that this was directed by Alexandre Bustillo? Maybe that's how you pronounce it. And Julian Maury. Once again, probably wrong. And it was written by Seth M. Sherwood. So, you can blame them if you don't like this movie.
Was the last movie we reviewed the one with 4 writers?
Yes.
Which one was that?
Yeah, that was the last movie we watched that had 4 writers. This movie only has 1 writer, but 2 directors.
I think the one writer kind of shows. That might just be the power of suggestion for me, but the storyline doesn't
feels
seem
more
so
cohesive.
homogenized.
Yeah.
It feels more cohesive, which is good. It's also kind of a boring movie, but it's more cohesive at least.
We don't share our opinions like that till the very end.
Except for when we do.
Except for when I do.
Yeah,
I'm allowed
except
to do.
for when Austin shares his entire opinion on the movie midway through the
that's
podcast.
6 minutes into this podcast.
I'm rogue. I like to do what I want.
Oh, a rebel we
He's
got here with Other
The
Chris.
leader. Uh-oh.
And also our director of photography is Antoine Serrier. And our only person returning from the last movie is composer John Frizzle.
Well, the director also executive produced this movie.
That is true. Look at
Gotcha on that one.
wow, look at Other Chris doing his research, coming in and
Other Chris should host this
embarrassing
podcast.
me. I mean, he should, because then I don't have to take notes, and I love that. But yeah, and also I have no fun facts for this movie because there were none. I tried, I watched a ton of different information about the movie, and there was really no fun facts. The closest thing that I'll drop right here, because it literally will never actually be important, is this movie was shot in Bulgaria.
Gotta
Okay.
get those tax breaks.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was shot in Bulgaria by French directors with a mostly English cast. So,
Like from England, you mean?
from...
Okay.
I mean, when you say someone's English, yes, you typically mean they're from England. I mean, to be fair, they're probably from the United Kingdom. There's probably one, Welsh dude in here, and I offended him by calling him English. But...
Yeah.
But yeah, we open on a birthday party for young Jed.
Yeah.
And everyone was invited. We got Verna Drayton. Verna, who in this movie is played by Lily Taylor, who was in The Conjuring. And
Good movie.
And Drayton is played by Dimo Alexiev. He didn't do anything that seemed notable to me, so there's his name.
There it is.
Then we got a little young Nubbins, which is the, I guess now canon name for the Hitchhiker.
Thanks, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah. Well, that one was only hinted at. This movie, we've directly said for sure he is definitely his name in the canon here. This movie said, hey, we said in Texas Chainsaw 3D that Texas Chainsaw 2 didn't happen, but we decided it does sometimes when we want parts of it.
Yeah. And a little Chop Top, too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, Chop Top doesn't exist. Nope.
Who is the kid with the little Union hat on. Is that Nubbins?
Probably.
Nubbins.
Yeah.
That is
Because he has like
I
a...
remember there being 2 kids.
He's got the weird like birthmark on his
Yeah,
waist.
it's the birthmark on his
Oh,
face.
you're
which
right.
means he's Nubbins.
You're right. That's right. Okay.
And we also have the pig thief, as you always invite to your party. Oh, and Grandpa. Did I mention Grandpa? I might have forgot to mention Grandpa. Grandpa's here too. Who he
I like
ages,
the appearance of Grandpa.
Yeah, he
Dude, me too.
completely changes in the next, 20 years. So does everyone in the cast. They all well, some of the kids make sense, but some of the adults here are supposed to completely change in the next 20 years. To the
They
point
don't.
where, yeah, we'll get to that especially in the later part when it's very obvious that this is, yeah. I'm just gonna move on. Little Leather is given a chainsaw for his birthday, and he is instructed to kill the thief, but he is hesitant. So Drayton pushes him into cutting the thief's leg. Jed then drops the saw, so Grandpa has to come kill the thief with a hammer, shot to the back of the head, because he is the best at killing. It is confirmed. This is the first time we've actually seen him kill someone. It is now actually canon that he is the best at killing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
That was a good shot.
Sorry?
That was a good shot.
Yeah, it
He
was.
did a good job.
Dude, yeah.
We've seen a lot of... For some reason, we've seen a lot of hammer shots to the head in this franchise, and this is the only one that seemed to actually kill someone, so...
Yeah, well, he only takes one hit. Remember?
Yeah.
It's true. That is... that was a line that...
In the first movie.
Yeah.
And the second movie.
Yeah, because they basically reshot that whole scene. So yeah, it was definitely there again.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we head to a title card. And then we head... After the title card, it's just a title card. Because the credits have been happening throughout, all this. I will give it credit. When it comes to, a credit scene, it was nice because it wasn't one. It was just kind of there happening. I didn't have to, sit and wait and be like, all right, cool, we're going through the credits. I respect that they, hid the credits through stuff actually happening. So after we get past the title card, we're on a Texas road now in 1955. Well, I guess we were in 1955 too, probably, but it's now confirmed to be 1955. Where Betty and Ted swerve out of the way of some sort of figure in the road, maybe a calf, it seems. And Betty goes to investigate it, but it's actually Jed in a cow head.
That cow head looked cool.
It does.
I kind of wanted one.
I respect that.
I might go to a farm and get one, You never know.
I hear they have plenty of them.
Yeah.
Depends on where you go.
Yeah.
You just go to a corn farm and you're like, where's the cow heads?
Where's the...
Right
I saw it in a movie once.
Yeah.
And he asks for help as he runs off. She then, follows after him, and we get a low-angle butt shot. Woo! It's back! Yay!
It totally didn't even register for me that was what was happening.
That was one thing I actually liked about this movie. I felt like 3D was really exploitative of the women, and this one felt a lot more respectful. I which was something I appreciated. The monkey part of my brain liked 3D, but the
human part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also
the
really
feminist
liked
part
it,
of me
but,
was like, oh, thank you for, not being awful.
Yeah, it was certainly tamer on that front.
but also not in other ways.
A little bit more
we'll get to
tasteful.
when it happens.
Yeah. All of the gore.
Or the fact that this movie has nudity and that movie didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's that.
But there's only one.
There is only
You
one.
know,
I mean, to be
so-
fair, we only ever really saw... I guess we saw
Concentrated, you spread
two
it
girls
out.
in their underwear in that last movie. So, I guess you're right. There were less scantily clad or naked women in this movie.
It was also the way they shot it, because they didn't shoot the women in this as, there was one shot in 3D. Sorry to talk about 3D. I know y'all talked about that last
You
week.
should have
but
been here for the podcast.
I know, right? There was one shot specifically though where they were doing a circling. They were circling around her, and then they readjusted the camera to make sure her butt was in the the focal point of the frame. That one kind of bothered me.
Yeah, that movie was obsessed with the actress Tanya's butt. They were like on her butt for most of that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Bad movie.
This movie isn't fully though without leering views, because this is they are recreating the classic look at this low angle shot of a girl's butt, because it's a Texas Chainsaw film and we can't come up with anything original for the camera work in them.
I will say though, it was definitely shot to show the butt, but it was more look, we remember the original film.
It's the best one of the
We've
franchise.
seen it too.
I wish we were watching it. But yeah, the point is they do show her butt, and I've brought it up every other time, so I have to bring it up here, even if it is non-consequential to the plot of the movie in any way whatsoever. Which I will say also, this is, as even me bringing up this as like that thing I brought up as kind of like an example of how this franchise is super unoriginal. This is one of the few times I actually really like do a specific thing that's like, hey, remember the better movie? So I do respect it for that. There's a lot less of there's no door slam in this movie, which was kind of nice. And like as an example, like I will say, like as much as I am, I brought it up to jokingly harp on it, I do appreciate that it's one of the only times it really happens blatantly, I feel like, in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Does that after we get a shot of her butt, she walks up to a barn, and she goes inside and sees some bone art. Woo! Sadly, this time there is no, sexy man there for the bone art, just actual bone art. It's a callback to my joke about bone art being like the last movie. It's a callback to the last movie.
Okay.
It was a callback to 3D.
Yeah, it's a callback to 3D, because that's what this podcast is. Because that was our most successful episode, so we have to that's our new thing. We have to mention Texas Chainsaw 3D in every episode, and because if not,
let's let the money roll in.
Yeah. I mean, we're not making any money, but yeah.
Yeah. Figurative money.
Yeah, figurative money. Then we get a little bit of some, tension building as she kind of looks around, and then Jed pops out and scares her as the floor that she's standing on gives way, and she falls down and is like messed up. I don't know the logistics of how that fall happened, because I don't think the way the blood was on her is realistic in any way, because mostly like the top half of her looked messed up, the part we could see, but she like just fell straight back.
It seemed like she I thought there was like a spike or something, but I didn't see anything, so I was kind of confused about that too.
Maybe there was something at the bottom, like maybe she fell into a metal tub, and that nothing really makes sense about why she was in the condition she was in.
Other than, hey,
bottom.
Look, gore is cool. You like gore.
Yeah.
I feel like that's really the actual answer is, gore's cool. There's a couple other, scenes that I can think of, the one specifically where it's like, that's not how that would happen at all, but it looked really cool.
She fell like 12 feet, and now every bone in her body is broken.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah. What happens next? Drayton and Nubbins pop out, and they come over. Drayton talks to her for a little bit, and then makes Nubbins drop a big car engine on her, crushing her to death.
Looked like it hurt.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah.
I don't think that if we saw her all mangled up after that, it would have made sense, because that would have actually mangled her. But we don't, because we fade to black, and we come back to an angry officer, Hal Hartman, who might...
Who's this guy?
He is... If you probably don't remember this, because I don't think I mentioned it in the last episode, because who cares about people's last names? But he is the father of the antagonist of Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Oh.
Yeah. Good old Bert Hartman of the last movie, the mayor, is his son. As well as he also has another kid who is, good old dead Betty.
Huh.
But yeah, so that is another thing, including, the Verna, that is definitely saying this movie is in the same timeline as Texas Chainsaw 3D. See, look, a Hartman's here. Maybe this is why Bert was so mad.
About that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I guess that's nice, giving a little motive to Bert.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He picks up on his dad's white whale thing.
Yeah. I would care more about it if I, cared about the plot of the last movie. Which I didn't.
That is a tall order to ask of anyone.
Hey, well, Isaiah liked the last movie, as we discussed last week.
That is true. That's probably what I said.
That's a pretty absurd opinion, but I'll accept it.
And that's why he's leaving.
Yeah,
I gotta stop joking
fired.
about that before they know what it means. I already did that last week when he said that was his opinion. But yeah, so Hartman shows up. I'm not sure if he's supposed to be the, I think he's supposed to be, I think I remember reading that he's supposed to be a Texas trooper. Throughout, I think I heard that is what he is. I took it more as him being a sheriff later, but maybe he's not. I don't know what his exact role in, local police force he is, but he is a cop. So he's here, and
We do eventually learn in kind of like a Disney villain description. He's a cop who specializes in bringing in troublesome children.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the guy with the big nose from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I thought that's his beat, is truant kids.
Yeah.
He takes them to the foster homes, but I guess
You can't let them be out there.
Yeah. We're supposed to not like him, but also, he is bringing in 3 kids who just murdered somebody and do this on a regular basis. So also, I'm cool with him.
Get to bring in Drayton here because Drayton's not a kid, and he doesn't actually have any proof that they killed her. So he has to only take away the kids for child endangerment, which
again, reasonable.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But also seemingly doesn't. Also, he says, "I'm gonna." In this next scene, Verna shows up and is very mad at him after he yells at Drayton, and she shows up and is like, "You can't do any of this," basically, and she demands that Jed is let out of the cop car, but he's like, "No, I can't because of this is child endangerment, and I'm taking all your kids away because you took one of mine." But then we find out later that it doesn't seem like Nubbins ever went to it, so he only took Jed. I will take all of your kids. That one.
Yeah, just the one.
That
all
one.
of the one of your kids, because
Unless,
the other one might be a teenager and can be tried as an adult.
Unless Nubbins got out at some other point or something. But the implication is I'm taking all of them. But spoiler, only slight spoiler. I will say this to you guys. Let's not spoil the big twist in case someone only comes to us for it. In a couple scenes, we're going to find out that we're not supposed to know who Jed is. But you can't bring Nubbins along because he has a giant, birth defect on his face. And you'd be like, oh, that's Nubbins. So he had to somehow not get taken by Officer Hartman, who seemed, hell-bent on ruining Verna's life, ruining his. But only a little bit.
Yeah, I guess if you want to squint, you could see, Nubbins got separated and they just weren't stored in the same place.
But then,
stored.
Yeah. But then he also got out too at some point before everyone else. I guess maybe because he turned 18. Maybe he is older.
Well, he was rehabilitated, as we saw in the first movie.
Yeah.
He was ready to re-enter society.
He was definitely ready to re-enter society.
He was fit to hitchhike in vans across Texas.
And cut his hand up and sell pictures. He was a photographer by trade.
Not a good one.
What are you talking about? It's a good picture. That's literally his line.
That is one of the lines he has. It is a good picture.
So the kids he takes away all the kids that it's just Jed.
All one of them.
Yep. Then we time jump 10 years to 1965. Remember that date because just like the last movie, timelines are a little bit of a plot hole in this movie too.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
at least they're consistent in their weird continuity plot holes.
I mean, kind of. They are and they aren't, because now too much happens in a short amount of time, while the other time it's too little happens in a long amount of time. You know? They actually do like a reverse time issue with their timeline. The point
They're
is
consistently
yeah,
inconsistent.
consistently Lionsgate has no idea how time works.
Yeah, math is hard.
Apparently. Dr. Lang is played by, was the character we meet immediately once we get to 1965, and he is played by Christopher Adamson, and he gives some exposition on the Gorman house to a new nurse named Lizzie. Some of the exposition he gives is like, the big thing is that all their names are changed for the kids, because that's kind of the, I guess, central hook for this movie is you don't know who Leatherface is.
Because this is a Leatherface origin story,
Yeah.
in case you didn't pick that up from, the title Leatherface.
Man, the fact that it's a prequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the Heat talks for a while, and it's basically like, don't trust the kids, they're all evil at heart. But the important part is, they have new names, so you don't know who Jed is.
And Jed might not know who Jed is.
That's true.
Because mental conditions, zonked out on drugs, and we later find electroshock therapy and
Yeah.
their brainwashing techniques at the Gorman house for
Yes.
therapeutic reasons.
Mm-hmm. And Lizzie is played by Vanessa Grasset. It might be Grass. It's spelled Grasse. I'm not sure how that name is pronounced.
Grassy.
Grassy, yeah. I'm gonna call her Grass. Mrs. Grass. But yeah, actually, I'm gonna call her Lizzie because I'm not gonna bring up her actual name again as I go through this because that's not how I do this.
Yeah.
And she expresses a desire to help the kids there, and he tells her to not let down her guard. Then we cut to Lizzie going into like the main room where all like the kids are hanging out, doing
The
their
rec
little
room,
things.
one might say.
What'd you say?
I said the rec room, one might say.
Sure, yeah, that's it's a better word than I used. And she meets the burly, quiet, hulking Bud, who is played by Sam Coleman, who was the young Hodor in Game of Thrones. I thought that was a cool thing to find out. He's in 2 episodes, but I remember those episodes.
I never watched Game of Thrones.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
I always will bring up the roles I saw them in, and no one else on the podcast ever recognizes them normally, and I'm okay with that. Except for, like, I haven't seen The Conjuring, but I was like, that's a big horror thing, I should mention that.
Lizzie looks familiar.
Conjuring
and
is
I
good.
also remember Verna from The Conjuring. And that's it. I
She's a
couldn't
good
tell
actor.
you where Miss Grass is from, though.
I don't think she really did anything. Her Wikipedia entry didn't have a link, so I don't think she really did much other than this.
Huh. Interesting.
other Chris is scouring
I know,
Wikipedia.
he's making
already.
me look bad.
Seriously, yeah.
Nice.
And then we also meet the smooth, kind of charming Jackson, who is played by Sam Strike. Once again, nothing stood out to me about him. So that's his name, and we'll move on.
I will take this opportunity
Okay.
to bring up one thing. It's kind of an interesting challenge. I don't know if it's been like totally met yet, but we saw this before in one of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels that took place initially in the mental hospital. I don't remember which one it is numbering.
That is 3 Dream Warriors. I'm wearing a shirt about it.
Okay.
There you go,
Oh,
video
well, I can't say. But,
Yeah, but they can't. The video listeners can't. Viewers.
Well,
not listen. The video
and it's like-
listeners can see it.
they can. The video listeners can hear your shirt
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the word picture that you painted of it.
Yes. It's
But-
the movie poster. For our audio listeners.
I wish I could see it.
On my shirt. You'll see it after we're done filming. That's how this all... I always let you see my face real quick and then say, go away.
I wait all week for it.
So
Well,
what were
we
you
get
saying,
introduced to this. Yeah, we get introduced to the main character who has to be mentally unstable enough to be confined to an asylum, but also has to be charming and likable enough to be a main character with a love interest that compels us. And I think in the Dream Warriors, they kind of cupped out of that by saying, like, oh, they weren't actually insane. We were just giving them drugs to keep them from dreaming so that, we could subdue
I think you're
Freddy.
actually thinking of Freddy versus Jason now that I think about it. I could be wrong.
In any event.
Dream Warriors, the whole movie takes place there. So you're probably thinking of Dream Warrior, Freddy versus Jason. But
same deal with Dream Warriors for the most part. But in this one, I think in the end they kind of save it because just with like good acting, because he does get more unhinged towards the end. Is like he leaves his medication, I suppose. But when we first get introduced, I think, all right, I don't believe this guy's in a mental asylum. Like, there's nothing to indicate it.
That is one advantage I think this movie has, being set in 1955 or 65.
65.
Yeah, I think that's one advantage it has, is that asylums like that were really bad places, and I think the idea is like once you get into one, it's no matter how sane you seem, it's basically impossible to get out. There was a reporter that did that, I think sometime in the 50s or 60s, and she checked herself into an asylum to kind of see how everything was, and I don't know if she ever got out, or it took her a really long time to convince everybody that she was fine so she could get out. And there was like a whole like big like book written about it. It was really interesting. But
okay,
anyway,
to chalk it up to the abusive system. I mean,
I would
that was the read I got.
No, I think that's a great explanation. But I'd also throw in that as much as I see the reasons why you'd think that, I don't think Gorman House was supposed to be specifically a mental asylum. It was supposed to be a home for wayward youths, basically, which had a lot of people like. So he could have just done something bad, is kind of the implication that.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't think everyone
a lot
there
of these kids came from bad homes.
Yeah, and
whatever
most
that
of
might
them
look like.
were not sane, as we will find out as we get introduced to more of them. But
yeah,
that was one problem I kind of had with the movie. And I had this problem with 3D also. It kind of pokes at the system, and it's like, yeah, the system or the town is bad, and that's what makes them bad. But also, the family is just bad.
yeah.
And it seems like it can't make that decision. And
it
the movies aren't smart enough to have the nuance. The movies aren't smart enough to have the nuance to say that it's a complicated situation and it kind of feeds into each other. So, which is an advantage of the first movie, because they don't have to do any of that. They can just be a slasher, sort of.
Fair. After she gets talks to Jackson for a little bit, and he lays on the charm, kind of flirts with her a little bit. Ooh. She then goes to break up a fight between this random kid that never gets a name and Ike, who is played by James Blore? Maybe is what I wrote. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's right. Who knows?
I did not like him.
That's fair.
I wanted so much less of him.
It's fair.
I think you could cut him and I don't remember what his girlfriend's name is. I think you could cut them out of the movie, and it would be a significantly better movie.
I see what you're saying, but I also don't see how
villains.
Significantly shorter movie.
You also can't drive as much as they do. Kind of suck as characters, but I also think that's the point. The movie would have no drive without them. Like, them doing evil things is what makes the better characters stuck in it. So,
well, here's what I would rather see.
Oh.
I would rather have
movie pitches with other Chris.
Yes. This is my fix for the movie.
Okay.
Take them out of the movie, or have them and just have them in way fewer scenes. And replace their scenes with, if you want to keep them in the movie, replace a couple of their scenes with some scenes of Jackson and Lizzie getting closer. Just have them have some deep conversations. And
they share moonshine for a second. I think that's enough.
I
Really
just want.
plumbed the
I
depths
want.
of each other's souls in the moonshine scene.
They actually
really
don't talk like at all, but
Yeah, the end of the movie. I think I don't feel anything when the end of the movie happens, and I should feel devastated at the end of the movie. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I just don't feel anything because they don't have
Any
the kind of connection. Yeah, they don't have the kind of connection the movie's trying to
They
imply
had
that they have.
moonshine together. What? You guys have obviously never drank moonshine with anyone. I haven't either,
Oh, and
but
she did
this
lean on his
movie makes
shoulder
me
for a
think that
little
it's
bit,
really
so
important.
I guess that.
The shoulder.
But we'll bring up the parts we don't like about the end of the movie when we get to the end of the movie.
Yeah. I just had to. I had to set that up. You know?
Okay, yeah.
It's going to be a running thread.
Okay.
So that other Christian
I had a lot of-
complain every time they show up.
And you know what? I'm fine with that.
Exactly.
You know, I
And
do
you
that
know,
when I don't
that's
like
fair.
something. You did that that Freddy versus Jason episode. Oh boy, you wouldn't stop complaining.
Yeah.
Which is probably why Isaiah blocked it out of his mind and he couldn't remember that was the movie he was thinking of because he blocked that whole recording out of his mind.
It's blank. It's blank to me.
But yeah, so Ike is, after she breaks up that little fight, Ike tries to force himself on her before being stopped by Bud. Then we cut to her going to the bathroom, and Lizzie is being stopped. I read back up a line when I'm supposed to be on this line, sorry. In the bathroom, Lizzie finds the psychotic and self-proclaimed Dr. Lang's favorite, which never comes up again, but I wrote it down at this point because I thought, oh, is she going to get like a special treatment throughout the... Nope, it doesn't matter. She's Dr. Lang's favorite, according to her, and that's Clarice, who is played by Jessica Madsen, who... I'm going to have one of those, spicy opinions that disagrees with someone on the podcast. I actually really liked her in this movie. I disagree
I
with...
liked her performance. I just didn't want as much of her.
Okay, that's fair.
That was my big problem. Is there's just so much of them, and so little of the characters we're actually supposed to care about.
That's fair. That is fair. Okay. And she's trying to force this girl to like eat a mouse in our introduction scene with her.
Dude. Yeah.
That was upsetting.
Yeah. And she, stops her and, she tries to smoke and Lizzie says, no smoking. And that's where she reveals that she's Dr. Lang's favorite. So I guess she can smoke. But then that scene ends. It was just introduced Clarice. And then we're back in the rec room, as Chris Prime pointed out.
Oh. Okay.
And Dr. Lang is telling Lizzie he'll have to have a word with Bud and Ike. And Lizzie and Jackson are both like, yeah, Bud was just protecting Lizzie. He did nothing wrong. But, Dr. Lang's like, well, in his last foster house, he bludgeoned someone to death. And, Jackson's like, but they took his dog. And you know what? I think Jackson's right. Bud is innocent. You don't take a guy's dog. That's worth a bludgeoning.
You're gonna get bludgeoned.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a just bludgeoning.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe that's, maybe the first seed of realizing that maybe Jackson isn't actually all there because he thinks that's a justifiable reason.
Doesn't that have a balanced sense of morals? No.
You don't take a man's dog. Everybody knows that.
Fair, I guess.
The price to pay is a swift and prompt bludgeoning.
Yes.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
It's basically the Bible.
That's why there's
somewhere.
been no, we've never seen a dog in this franchise before because if we did and someone took it, we would have had to bludgeon them. And,
Yeah.
But yeah. Then we cut to a scene that's just later in the day because it's the same characters. Typically, you have like scenes that like have other characters, so you don't just have like it's later. But this movie does a lot of just it's later in the next scene. And we're in a hallway where Lizzie is doing something in the hallway before Jackson shows up and is like, "Hey, Dr. Lang has a chamber of horrors," and she's like, "But you can trust me," and that's the scene.
Got a chamber of secrets, actually.
Well, it's Chamber of Horrors.
Oh.
Or at least that's what
The
they
secret.
call it, says Jackson.
Electroshock therapy.
This isn't the secret movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
Chris, it's a horror movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
This isn't a secret movie. This is a horror. Next week we're gonna cover a secret movie. You've never heard of it. We're not gonna tell you what it
Ooh.
is.
Is that a new genre?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a movie that has a secret, and you don't get to know it.
Well, and if you think about it, this movie was a
And
secret
actually, this movie is a
up
secret
until-
movie because who's
Yes.
Jed? Is
Who
it
is he?
Ike? Is it Lizzie? Is it Bud?
Clarice.
Is it Clarice? Is it
I
Jackson?
did not
Is
need
it
the
Dr.
mystery element
Lang?
of this movie.
You
I did not need the mystery element of this movie.
What? Oh no, I disagree.
I actually really
I
I like the mystery because I actually like the twist. I mean,
I think if it was better executed, I would have liked it more.
that's fair.
But it just
No,
because the movie wasn't very good, it just didn't. The mystery element was my least favorite part of it. Not my least favorite part, but one of them.
fair. So in the end of when we get to the end of the podcast, we're actually just gonna skip over Chris Glass's part because we know his thoughts. I'm just kidding. He doesn't like it, guys. That's the spoiler for the ending.
I actually think it's okay. I just have.
Well, you could have saved that for the big reveal, Chris. Oh, man, you just.
Ah, dang it. We'll cut that out.
Oh, I'm not. I don't edit this. But yeah. Where did I leave off? Yeah, he told about the Chamber of Horrors. Chamber of Horrors. There, found it.
And the secret movie.
Yeah. We could then have a scene where Dr. Lang is meeting with Verna and her lawyer, Mr. Farnsworth. Woo! Who's not at all played by,
Oh, dude,
what?
I didn't even make that connection either. Farnsworth from
This
okay.
movie is a direct lineage. Come on, Isaiah. I mean, the reason you probably didn't make that connection is because the only thing that connects him to Farnsworth from the last movie is a bow tie.
Oh, I thought you were talking about from Futurama.
No.
Yeah. This movie is directly connected
Yeah.
to Futurama.
No.
If only. It'd be
I forgot his first name. Reichel. He's the guy from Hatchet. We love him in Office Space.
Yeah.
Forgot his name. Richard, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, Richard
I believe
Reichel.
that's it.
Who was, he played Farnsworth in the last movie. And, to be fair, unlike other times in this movie where it's completely unbelievable that a character could change that much, it is like 50 years before he has to be him, so it's kind of possible. It's still...
Yeah.
They also, they chose, here's this skinny dweeb, and he becomes this lovable fat guy. And it's like, does he though?
Yeah.
Well, he got married to a good woman who can cook, and
I guess so. Also, I feel like he
It's
also,
history.
lost, a foot of height. Because I feel like...
yeah, it's what happens when you just get married to a loving wife who can cook. You get shorter,
Oh.
about
Yeah.
a whole foot shorter.
I didn't know that. No.
Happened to me.
See?
Yeah, all right. You know what? It's now been confirmed. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess I'll move on. He's perfect casting. I stand corrected. She got a court order to be able to see Jed, or an injunction. Later it's referred to as an order, but here she calls it an injunction. But Dr. Lang's like, I'm sorry, you're gonna need a different order for me to open up the files to find out which kid is Jed. Sorry.
Definitely not legal.
So he has moved the goalpost on her. She can't see her kid again. Poor, evil, murderous Verna. I feel so sorry for her that she can't see
Yeah.
her kid.
This movie really tries to invoke a lot of emotions just
Without earning it.
with no right whatsoever.
Yeah. It was the same thing the last movie did, Texas Chainsaw 3D, that was also like, but actually, the Slayers were bullied, so maybe all the cannibalism and murder was okay.
And in a smarter movie, I would actually love that. But these movies are not smart enough for that.
I will agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, the first one's great. Remember the 1974 classic?
Oh, the first one's
That's
amazing.
The classic. And then this...
Yeah.
I mean, I like a
Everything
few of the
else
other ones.
after.
But the overall... yeah. But yeah, so we'll move on. Yeah, he moved the goalpost on her, so she's very angry. So she leaves. But does she? Because she actually doesn't fully leave.
No.
Because,
She's got to go to the restroom.
she's got to go to the bathroom. This next, like, couple scenes, I might have them slightly out of order because they kind of, like, cut back between them, and I might have started writing down what happened once I felt the scene actually was important. We have Lizzie, who hears some screaming from downstairs and heads down to the ECT chamber, which is the Chamber of Horrors. And then she watches as Dr. Lang electroshocks Bud. Then they hear the commotion that's from upstairs, which is Verna breaking in and trying to find Jed. This is after she lied and said she was going to go to the bathroom, but she doesn't. Well, she does, actually. She goes into the bathroom and then leaves. So I guess she didn't lie. Once again, Verna did nothing wrong. Verna is a saint and a hero, and we love her. But yeah, there's a bunch of... She just doesn't find Jed and just causes a bunch of chaos. Because all the patients start just, causing a bunch of ruckus, and they just start going all over the place. We cut back downstairs, and Bud breaks out of his restraints and beats the crap out of some orderlies, possibly kills them. They're never seen again, so sure, they're dead. We cut back and forth with more and more chaos. We cut to Clarice choking a girl with her own own braids. Because she was, she saw her with Ike, who is, her soulmate, we find out in this scene. They've never been seen together. We find out that they're soulmates in this scene. We didn't have an establishing scene seeing them in a scene together.
No.
We find out that they love each other here.
Is this movie not establishing something? That's weird.
Yeah, that's fair.
Crazy.
That was one thing I didn't like about this section in the movie, is I didn't know who anybody was, so I had no idea what was going on through this whole section.
It's fair.
It looked cool though.
It does
I
look...
liked the lighting effects. That was cool.
I like the first half of this. There is a point a little bit later that we'll get to when we get to it, but that I do start hating what they do with the way it looks visually. But first, as he's about to leave, Bud's about to leave, he lets out Ike. Or Ike asks him if he will, and then we don't know if he does. Spoiler, he does. We cut to upstairs at Dr. Lang's office as someone's at the door. It's Bud! And he comes in and, doesn't do anything at first, but, Dr. Lang, hits him once, which is the equivalent of taking someone's dog. So he bludgeons him to death on a window. In a really cool shot of him just, slowly smashing. This blood starts to come before he eventually breaks the window and then, severs his... It doesn't cut off his head, but cuts his neck with the broken glass, officially killing him, which I thought was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Also, I saw a clip of the actor who was so excited to be able to kill this guy, in the way he's describing the scene. He's like, "I just get to kill him," and it's all right, okay, settle down. But it was a happy, it wasn't the remake, the remake guy who's I was born to be Leatherface, and you're okay, settle down, dude. This guy was he just seemed so happy. He's I got to kill this guy. It was really cool because he didn't actually kill a guy. He I got to smash this fake head, and it started acting like a real head. It was crazy. I guess the moral of the story is the British people are just nicer than the Americans. That's the moral of the story.
Oh, I could kill this guy in it.
Also, Inverna did nothing wrong. She's actually the hero of the movie. That's a callback to Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation. Go listen to that episode of our podcast if you haven't.
That movie is truly something.
Yeah, don't watch the movie. Listen to our episode. And maybe watch, a YouTube video of the best of Matthew McConaughey in the movie, get his 4 best scenes, and then don't watch the rest of the movie. That's the best way to enjoy that movie, is listening to our podcast and seeing clips of Matthew McConaughey's couple of his scenes.
In that order.
But mostly, listen to our podcast. 4 times, so you get every detail. But yeah, then we cut down in the chaos as Clarice. She finds Ike, and they, I just start,
playing harmonica
in the middle of the chaos against a wall. In the middle of this riot.
They are soulmates.
They are soulmates. So much so that she plays a little mouth harmonica, also in the middle of the chaos, and it's all right.
relatable moment. We've all been there.
It was really kind of like a really sweet moment where I really like felt their love. No, it was weird, and it's not the last time they will be weird together, and I will hate that I have to read what they did.
Yeah.
Then we cut downstairs, and Lizzie and this other nurse are hiding in the basement. And a patient attacks the other nurse, and he stabs her face. And this is the point where I hate the way the movie's being shot, because the lights are flickering to the point of practically, like, not able to view it. Like, it is headache-inducing for me, seizure-inducing for someone who is light-sensitive. Like, it didn't add anything. It was just painful. There was some cool gore that you'd see, like, for half a second before it went black again. As he, like, I believe cuts open her, like, jaw with, like, a straight razor, which, that's pretty dope.
It is pretty metal.
Yeah. And then Jackson shows up, and he just kicks this other patient in by just stomps his head in. Once again, some cool gore that you kind of get to see as we flash in between strobe lighting effects. Then thankfully they leave that room, and it's not hard to look at for the rest of the movie. Well, there's a couple scenes that are maybe a little hard to look at, but for completely different reasons.
Also, this is another peeling away of the layers of Jackson's sanity.
You're like, oh.
As we watch him brutally murder a person.
But he was doing it to defend someone. He likes this girl. It's almost like someone took his dog.
Yeah. He had to stomp that guy's face in.
Yeah. So he helps her out, and they go to start escape. They head outside, and they run into Ike and Clarice. And they lose a fight to them and are put in the trunk of the doctor's car. I only know it's the doctor's car because there's like a throwaway line which explains how they got the car. It's like, oh, the doc drives a nice car. And they're like, all right, thanks, Ike, for letting me know whose car this is. Because that was important. But then they start to drive away. And they see, but Ike sees Bud walking on the sidewalk, and, he picks him up because, he owes him one for freeing him. Ain't that? That Ike guy, he's a nice guy. No issues whatsoever.
No.
Yeah, no, he's a bad guy.
He's fair.
He's a bad boy. No good time for Ike.
Actually, there's a few good times for Ike.
Yeah, no, Ike actually has a pretty good life before he dies. After that, they're Bud, Ike, and Clarice. They change. We cut a little bit later. They're changing clothes, so they're not wearing their asylum outfits, so people don't think they're the same people. Then they go to the trunk and they get Jackson and Lizzie out of there. Lizzie tries to escape, but is stopped by Clarice. And Ike says that if anyone tries to leave again, he'll kill them all. And also,
she doesn't do later.
Yeah.
When somebody does escape, so
yeah.
Kind of an empty threat,
Stop
I guess.
messing around.
Well,
he's not a man of his word.
What? You don't think Ike is reliable? But yeah, we get kind of the first instance of, I guess not first, but the first instance of Clarice seeing it, of him kind of wanting to watch, Lizzie change, which is making Clarice a little jealous. We then find out Ike's plan is for them to escape to Mexico. After stopping by his mom in Austin, which we find out in a later scene that I probably didn't even write down, that he actually doesn't know if his mom even lives in Austin because she keeps moving and he has no idea where she is. But at this point, he tells them that they're going to stop in Austin to see his mom.
And get good barbecue.
And get good barbecue, yeah.
Which must be in every movie.
Yeah, you got to mention barbecue. Then we cut to a flashbulb sound effect. Woo! From an actual flashbulb camera. So, that was pretty cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because the police are, the crime scene photos are being taken with a, flashbulb camera. And they're taking the pictures of the dead Dr. Lang. And, Hartman shows up and is on the scene with Deputy Sorrells, who is played by Finn Jones. of Iron Fist and Game of Thrones fame. He is Iron Fist. He's the white guy cast as that typically Asian role. Good on
Yay,
you,
Hollywood.
Marvel. But yeah. So he's there. He's, here in this movie.
Yeah, just like he's kind of there in Iron Fist.
Yeah. Well, he's the star of that.
Right, we're saying the same thing.
Okay. And then Hartman talks about how he has his suspicions of who killed the doctor. Now, he doesn't tell us who those are, so I don't know who he thinks it is. I guess the assumption is that he thinks it's Jed, but is it? Because we know Bud did it. Is Bud Jed, or is it Clarice? You'll never know.
Well,
Or is it Clarice? Yeah. Isn't that the question of the century?
Sorrel's sorry. Then we cut away to Verna, who is getting a phone call from an unknown person, and she's finding out about the breakout. Ooh. Then we cut to a different scene with more the police, and we have Sorrel's telling the sheriff, or I guess he's not a sheriff. I don't know what Hartman is. I wrote sheriff because I thought he was a sheriff. I'm sorry if he's not. And then the car has been spotted, and Hartman tells Sorrells to basically tells him to kill these kids. Like, you don't give them a chance, just shoot them on sight.
Yep.
Which is, I'm pretty sure actually how the police handle this kind of situation. So I mean, good on the movie for accuracy. Then we cut to the kids. Woo! They're back in the movie, I guess, for a couple now. And they're walking up on this barbecue joint, and they decide to go in and it's two separate couples to not throw off any alarms, as well as leave Bud outside because he's kind of a distinctive person that people might have heard is on the loose. So they'll keep him just outside, so if anyone leaves the restaurant, they see him and report it to the... wait a second. Because he's not hiding.
Bud is taking his dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the implication might have been okay, Bud, you're staying way back here.
He's standing
Bud,
right at the door when the door gets opened.
Well, Bud just runs. He's I would be a part of this too.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I don't know if he was directed to stand outside the door, and it's not. I mean, also that.
I thought he stayed in the grass back there, but this movie isn't very sticky, so I don't remember.
Fair enough. They go inside in their separate couples, and Ike and Clarice, after a little conversation of eating some food, they decide, you know what? Let's have some fun and let's kill some people. So they kill this guy right behind them to steal his gun. It looks like they kill the waitress. We find out she makes it for a couple more scenes. By a couple more scenes, I mean this scene. And they also shoot two other guys in the head. One of them I think is the cook. And then they just start to rob everyone else. While this starts to happen, Jackson curls up in the fetal position. And Lizzie tries to escape, but is stopped by Bud, who doesn't want to die. Because as we established earlier, if she gets away, Ike said he'll kill Bud. So Bud's I don't want to die, so he grabs her and holds her still. Which, you know what? I think is a fair reaction for Bud. We find out later that I guess Bud's life isn't on the line. Because, like we said, Ike is not reliable. Or, not reliable, but, he's not. But
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. But, yeah, so, inside, Ike ends it all by... Or, not ends it all, but I guess ends the scene by finishing off the waitress with this brutal, shotgun shot to the head. That I feel is pretty unrealistic, the way the blood comes out of it, but it looks really cool. It is a cool kill. I don't think that's how that would work, but I liked it.
Blood does
I
jump
like
up
heightened
at him.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like it when they do stuff like that.
Because it, shoots at him, which I don't think that's how it would work. I think it would more splatter out. It doesn't matter. It's still awesome. They start to try to escape to the car, but there's this one patron from inside who Jackson fought for a little bit, who has a gun, and he shoots Bud, and he grazes him with the bullet. And then we transition to later when Sorrells and Hartman are there, and they get info on the stolen car from the guy who shot Bud. He's still alive, and he's like, I think it was this car. Blue, I guess, maybe? I don't know. But, fair. I mean, he was, pretty messed up. So.
Punched in the head a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might be in shock from watching a whole bunch of people get murdered in front of him.
But he does seem to actually remember everything he needs to. He's like, actually, it's this car. It is this color. But, there's like this. It's just this weird thing where they feels like, and I think once again, like we probably may point out, is this movie's not well made, and it's supposed to be like this situation where like he's trying to remember it, but the guy just kind of reads the lines almost of like, it's blue or gray. It's gray. No, it's blue. Like it just feels really bad. But yeah. We then cut to the car being ditched. So that whole big scene where they like figure out what car they're in, it doesn't matter because they're no longer in it. It was pointless. We cut to back to the diner for no reason because they're not in that car. They've already had to ditch it because Ike did not check the gas tank in the car he was stealing. Ike, so unreliable.
Never thinks ahead.
I mean, yeah, I don't think he thought any of this ahead. Then we stick with them for a little while, and the crew comes upon a camper in the woods. They go inside. Ike makes Lizzie go in first, obviously, because he's a gentleman. Ladies first. And after they kind of look around for a while, Ike gets real up in Lizzie's face and scares her, causing her to take a step back and fall, like break the floor and fall onto a corpse that's just hanging there. And she like falls open mouth. It's awkward. She basically licks this corpse's face, which is the name of my new band, Licking Corpses' Faces. The EP's out this fall. But yeah, so after she makes out with the dead body, I'm kidding. No one would make out with a dead body in this movie. That would be disgusting. There's no way this movie would have a character make out with a dead body.
No way.
No.
Certainly not so close to the camera.
Yeah, that would never happen.
Yeah.
What if I told you?
Never happen.
What if I told you?
What if I were to tell you?
Yeah, Lizzie tends to Bud's wound. Then we cut to later in the night, and Jackson and Lizzie, they have the most heartfelt bond over some moonshine.
Drinking moonshine.
It
right.
completely
Like
changes their dynamic. They've fallen in love now. They're going to get married, have 12 kids, all because of the moonshine.
What's that? Jackson falls asleep and Lizzie immediately tries to escape?
There is that.
Whoa,
but
I think that's actually after another
Some
scene.
stuff happens before that.
We have to. Yeah, I was only. I don't. I'm not. I was a joke. It was a joke about how the.
Yeah, no, I was playing off your joke.
I guess. I felt like you were
we
more
can't forget the
no-butting
fact
me in
that-
my joke. Bad improv.
Dude, not smooth. But they were in the diner, and Jackson said, like,
Oh, it's true.
what if this was a date?
I wish I
Right?
was dating you.
I wish I was dating you. Yeah.
I wish we weren't on the run from murdering folks at an asylum.
And Lizzie's like, I didn't kill anyone, and don't say we're on the run for murdering people.
I am a hostage.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have the heartfelt moonshine. Yeah, and then we cut away from that. For this really artistic and not disgusting and messed up at all Harmonica scene between Ike and
I thought it was
Clarice.
very romantic.
Yeah, very romantic.
On top of a corpse.
We do find out that, Ike loves Clarice no matter what, because, we do see, as we see her naked body, that she is severely burned. Apparently in, like, a different cut of the script, that, like, her being a burn victim was supposed to be actually, like, important to the plot, but it isn't in this movie. It's just, I guess, a gross out moment. I don't know. So she's burnt, and then, yeah, they're playing the harmonica on a body, and that's not enough.
Boning, as I call it. I said boning, as I call it.
I like it. I mean, I don't, but I like the joke. But it's not enough to just, do it on a body. She has to, as we alluded to, make out with the dead body.
In the jam session.
Yeah, she wants to include Corpsey there. So yeah.
He just doesn't want him to be left out.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on now and never talk about that scene ever again. Ever. All right.
Yeah, agreed.
Then after that's done, Ike comes out and we have this, honestly, I think pretty well done, like, dramatic tension scene where Ike is, like, accusing Lizzie of, like, reading all their files and is like, she doesn't actually care about us, she's just one of them. And, like, I'll give the movie credit because, there's not a lot to give this movie, like, real credit for. I actually think this scene was done really well with the drama they were trying to build here of, like, Jackson seeming just way too trusting of Lizzie, but Ike being like, hey, she was one of the people who was basically, even if she hadn't done it yet, she was part of the group of people who were torturing us. She might not be 100% on the level. She is trying to throw my medical information at me, which shows she's read my file. So,
good. Yeah.
That's
a good point.
I thought it was a pretty good done scene. Then there's a little discussion. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, the only thing I think that I wish they would have done in that scene, because I feel like the movie was kind of trying to set Jackson up as being like, he's a person that will go out of his way to really defend the people he cares about, which is why he, like, really defended Bud. And then at the end of the movie, there's the scene where, he gets really upset after... Like,
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I think having him being overly protective of Lizzie kind of would have benefited the movie, so they could have actually, reestablished that. Because this movie has a really bad problem of trying to set stuff up and then not really setting it up, and then trying to call back to it later as if it's like, yeah, we were setting that up the whole time, right?
Yeah, that's fair. The scene after the little dramatic part ends with a little discussion from Ike and Jackson about their kind of like respective families. This is where we find out that he actually doesn't know, where his family is. So I guess they're not stopping in Austin. We also, I think at this point, Jackson talks about how he doesn't have any family but Bud. So you're like, aw, poor Jackson. And Bud, he's the first one on watch. So he's going to go outside and watch while everyone else sleeps. Lizzie, she wakes up from her sleep, and she decides to escape, because, as, Chris established, that heartfelt moonshine was apparently only heartfelt to Jackson. Somebody was faking the heartfelt scene that actually wasn't heartfelt at all. So she tries to run away, and she gets out the door no problem. Apparently Bud's is not paying attention at all. So she just starts running, but she is caught by Ike, who was about to force himself on her when Jackson runs up and just takes Ike down. And then they brawl for a bit, with Jackson getting the upper hand, until Clarice shows up with the shotgun, followed closely by Bud. See, Bud's here. He's like, oh, sorry, my bad. I was on the other side of the, camper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a squirrel.
Big camper. A lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, you understand.
Walking the ramparts.
Clarice is ready to just kill them all, because, that's the plan. If they try to escape, kill them all. But Ike wants to stick to the original plan. We also in this scene...
Family.
Yeah, sure. We also in this scene also have him lie about who was trying to escape, because I guess he's trying to cover his own butt of trying to, force himself on her, because he knows that, that'll make Clarice jealous, so he wants to be like, actually, I was trying to stop Jackson. Yeah. Jackson.
Yeah.
And then as he's about to leave, Ike is, he also gets a little quick in, just berating a Bud, talking about how he's worthless and should have never existed. And also, a bad lookout. So Ike goes off to...
Which is the equivalent of killing or taking his dog.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
We know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't insult Bud. So Ike goes off to pee, and when he finishes, he gets knocked out by Bud. He comes to, all bloody, with Bud just dragging him into this field. And then Bud prepares to, curb stomp him on a rock. And after we get some really cool, bloody, mouth gore as he's, prepping him for it, we do a somewhat tasteful, cut away to not actually see the actual, head explode, which doesn't actually when we see it later. Like you would think in a horror movie it should have. But...
yeah, he doesn't really curb stomp him so much as he, curb squishes him.
Yeah, I guess. It's fair.
It's just like a slow...
I feel like that's what we set up with, but then we cut away as he, there's him lowering the foot.
Right. It's a slow lowering.
No, it was quick. I could be wrong. I haven't watched it in, a week, but I remember being, a stomp. First he's, kind of, torturing him for a little bit, it seems. Because,
I think it'd be worse to get curb stomped slow.
Oh, it's fair.
Yeah.
I think it would be worse. Maybe not. I don't know. I've never been curb stomped, so I wouldn't know.
No. I'm not getting curb stomped. I'll jump out of a building. I'm not getting curb stomped, though. I've got a line, and that's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had a line. But yeah, so he stomps him, slowly or not slowly. There are differing opinions on which one it was, and none of us are going to rewatch this movie to find out. So we will move on. In the morning, Clarice is realizes Ike isn't in bed, so she goes to look for Ike. Jackson goes to follow her to Lizzie's protest because she's like, we should just leave, which is, fair. But Jackson's like, but family.
But Bud.
Bud. I love Bud. And then he pulls out a Bud Light and spikes the camera. That doesn't happen. Sorry to disappoint people.
Yeah.
This isn't a Transformers movie.
No.
He tells Lizzie that this Bud's for her.
Yeah. We gotta go save Bud because he's so cool and refreshing to be around.
And low in calories.
Yeah. Bud is not low in calories.
No.
Bud is a big boy.
He's a large gentleman.
Yeah. But yeah, so she does follow him though after a little bit of protest, and they're in danger of. Wait, oh sorry, I read that. Jackson and Lizzie find Bud sleeping on Ike's corpse. Then we cut back to Clarice, who is apprehended in the woods by Deputy Sorrells. He asks her where the others are, and she says it's just her and Ike, but she can't find him, which. I don't know if this is supposed to be some sort of mild, for sure, character redemption for Clarice. Is she protecting the other? I don't get it. I feel like she could have got
At this point, I don't think she knows that Ike is dead yet, so I think she's trying to protect Ike.
But she said Ike is out there. She said it's just her. She didn't protect Ike. She protected Bud and the other three by saying that they weren't there with them.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. It makes no sense for her character, but it happens.
Yeah.
I guess it's a snitches get stitches situation.
I guess so. But then Hartman shows up, and he doesn't buy her story, and he pistol whips her. He then, shoves his thumb into her head wound.
To
try to,
pretty hardcore.
Yeah. If he wasn't, a bad guy, it'd be cool. Because that's the moral of this little part of the arc of these two movies that are the prequel and sequel to the original is no one is redeemable. Not one person in the whole franchise at this point is redeemable. Except for maybe Ted. Ted was fine.
And Werner.
And Betty might have been okay too. Betty was a good person, and she died for it. So don't be a good person. That's the moral of the story. Also, Verna, once again, not a good person. She's the best person.
What are you talking about?
It's like, yeah, I'll move on. I don't know where I'm going with this. We got this. Yeah, just moving on.
Yep.
But, you know, she's still not giving him any information, and she spits in his face, which distracts him enough for her to run away. She continues, once again, in, like, this weird character development and redemption-ish that is completely unwarranted and not brought about by anything. She's running, yelling about how the cops are there, warning everyone to, like, hide, which I guess that could be because she wants Ike to hide, but she definitely also did protect the other three earlier by just saying they weren't there, which I thought was weird. But yeah, she's running, yelling about him, like, hey, police are here, hide.
And then she gets shot in the back.
Yeah, well, yes, you're right.
And the leg.
Yeah, it's in the leg. And he takes her down. Lizzie wants to, you know, get his help, but Jackson tells her that Hartman is corrupt and has a vendetta against troubled kids. Which, we alluded to earlier, as I believe mentioned it, and it's like, yeah, it's part of the story, I guess. I guess because the Betty, he decided to hate all troubled kids, not just the Sawyer clan. Because, I think there's a line, I don't remember where it happened in the movie, where we find out that, like, 50 of the 100 kids or something like that were brought in by him specifically to Gorman House. Yeah. So he really...
it's believable that a man whose child was taken away from him would just become bitter towards people who... Yeah.
I mean, it's believable. It is somewhat believable, but I still feel like... I don't know, just you take out that family, like, and that's fair. Like, target that family, but those other families had nothing to do with it.
I mean,
but once again,
I guess.
No characters can be redeemable at all.
No.
Already read that. Two shot down. Vendetta. Then at the end of this, we cut to like him talking to Clarice a little bit, and she like ends it by just like laughing at Hartman, and then she like brings up his dead daughter and talks about how he's like just like a grumpy man because his daughter's dead. So he shoots her in the head. To all the other cops, like shock and horror because that's not how you do that. He is not following protocols.
Oh.
Well, then they all open fire on the RV because he convinces them. It's like, this is justice. They're like,
all right. And they open fire, but there's no one in there. It's just the dead body from earlier.
Who's had quite the afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. We said we weren't bringing that scene up again. Thanks for bringing it up again. Lizzie tries to like make some noises, but Jackson, keeps her quiet by like putting his hand over her mouth. She then runs away from him while the cops are shooting the camper. And then Jackson, Lizzie, and Bud, I guess there's no real explanation for how they're able to like convince her to like listen to them at this point, because she ran away from them. But then when Jackson's like, hey, let's hide in this cow carcass, she's like, all right. She seemed like she was already done with this whole caring and hiding thing. But now
I don't know how they all fit in there.
Yeah, there's also that. I don't think Bud would have fit in there, let alone the three of them.
I guess maybe if they dug a hole first.
Because they had time for that as they heard the dogs barking and decided to hide.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're led to believe that pile of mud and manure is so deep that
I think the actual answer is...
actually create a localized sinkhole just around the rotting body of the cow.
I think you guys are all missing the most important point is Star Wars did it, and Star Wars is cool, so we do it.
Yes. Star Wars was cool for showing the organs come out.
Yeah.
They cut it in this one, and it's like a rug.
Yeah.
Because
they completely cleaned it out so they could all fit. They had time for that when they heard the dogs start to bark.
Uh-huh.
They
I don't
dug
know
a
why they didn't
5-foot
just come
hole,
out the same hole.
completely cleaned out the cow, and all that enough time to do this, and hid all the extra organs and dirt that they.
Well, they put that in the 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot hole.
They should have just gone out the same hole they came in. I don't know why they had to cut themselves out of the cow, but
Because it was a cool shot to put the camera looking out of it. You guys are forgetting
it was
the
cool,
important
actually.
things.
I did like that, actually.
It wasn't really. Here's the thing: it's a stupid shot because of why it's there. But I'm not going to lie and say that a shot of like a hole getting widened around the camera wasn't pretty cool.
It was cool.
Just like hiding in a body is cool because Star Wars did it, so we'll do it.
Yeah.
Where do we leave off? Cow corpse. They leave. They're hiding, and they all they kind of walk around for a while. We had a couple different shots of them just kind of walking before they find like a little creek. Jackson and Lizzie both try to kind of like clean themselves off. It does nothing because they are literally covered in cow entrails. But their faces, I guess, are a little bit cleaner.
The tab.
Yeah. They keep walking, and Lizzie waves down a cop because I guess she's changed her mind now. A couple minutes ago, she was completely willing to hide in a cow corpse to evade the police, but now she's
that police was corrupt, Austin.
Oh, you know what? I stand.
He
corrected.
may have killed her.
This
maybe.
movie is perfect. I stand
That's a good
corrected.
point, actually. I mean,
Then they keep.
But this cop is just a random cop on the side of the road.
Yeah. So she waves. She kind of like calls at him. He stops. We cut to them like up on the top of the hill, and Bud is just, I guess, even though she's the one who called him down, Bud's the one who's going first and not listening to the cop and gets shot in the arm. And then he tackles the cop down before getting shot through the head.
Yeah.
I mean, as we've alluded to and saying there's a twist, you figured out probably at this point that he is not Leatherface. But I will say I do actually think this movie did a very good job of making you think that he was probably Leatherface. Because
Yes.
I agree with
he
that.
should be Leatherface if you look
He's
at him.
got the build of the Leatherface.
Yeah.
He's very non-vocal. He kind of just grunts like Leatherface.
He says a couple
grunts.
words, which is, believable that maybe Leatherface could. Like, he does say Jackson at one point, and, like, he says a couple things, but, like, yeah, it's, like, he's a non-verbal...
He's got the mannerisms.
He's a giant, hulking, non-verbal kid who with special needs, it seems like. Like, that is Leatherface in that first movie. Like, this would make all the sense in the world for him to become Leatherface. But instead, it's Lizzie? No, it's not. It's Jackson.
It's Clarice. Oh, wait. No,
Clarice
she's
is dead.
too.
The only two people who could be at this point are Lizzie and Jackson.
It could be Verna.
Yes, true. She's not seen in... Oh, wait, no, she is seen kind of in the 3D.
Yeah.
But yeah, once again, I will say I do think this movie actually did a really good job of hiding. Here's the thing. I had
was a
watched
good
a video
twist.
on this movie, so I knew that Bud was going to die and Jackson was Leatherface.
dang.
But I did, as watching it, they did a really good job with Bud. Like, he seems like he should have been Leatherface. If anything, it's believable for him to be Leatherface in 8 years. It's totally believable.
Totally not.
The option they went with as well. Totally.
No.
That's pretty obvious. I
Yeah,
think there
I
was some
mean-
obvious sarcasm there.
No, I disagree.
You disagree that I had obvious sarcasm? That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that freaks out Jackson. So he runs towards the cop and proceeds to just bash his head in with the cop, his cop car's door, and then like finishes him off with a stomp. And Lizzie and Jackson then escape in the cop car, and Jackson is freaking out about how the loss of Bud,
Foaming
like,
at the mouth, freaking out.
Bud is
yeah.
dead, because
Why'd you run? You killed
this-
Bud.
Yeah, this movie did such a great job of, taking Jackson from seeming relative... Like, here's the thing, yes, they showed some hints of it. But they went from Jackson being relatively, like, calm and collected to being completely crazy in one scene. And, like, don't get me wrong, he lost someone he cared about. I get that. But I do feel like we've kind of pointed out, especially other Chris, this movie definitely could have done a better job of doing things longer and making things mean more when they happened. Jackson just kind of snaps and is really mad now. And
they really just rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, he's Leatherface. It makes sense. There's no other options now, but now I get it because he's crazy.
It wasn't Hartman?
Wasn't Hartman.
That's why he hates him so much as his dad.
Now that would have been a twist.
That's why that Farnsworth doesn't look like the other Farnsworth. Because he's Leatherface. Yeah, so Jackson freaks out and he's blaming and like scaring Lizzie with all this because, he's like, you did this, why'd you run? And then Hartman starts shooting at them from behind in this chase. He hits Jackson in the face, mangling his face. Once again, some awesome gore effects. I wish I wrote down the people who did the effects in this movie.
The bullet goes through his cheek and just splits his face apart.
Wonder how I got these scars.
Yeah, he's very Joker-esque, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. It looks cool. And
it does look really cool in the scene.
Then they continue the chase for a little bit. He shoots again. I think hits Lizzie, causing her to crash the car. Not sure. Maybe he just spooked her. I don't know. But she does a cool car flip once again. Stunts. Cool stunts. The car flip was nice. It was a car flip.
Was a car flip.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to mess up a car flip, but I'm not going to deny the fact that it's always impressive and cool to look at when it happens. I read that. Then Lizzie wakes up. And she's in the Hartman's cop car now. And she's handcuffed. But is able to answer the radio as Sorrells is trying to get a hold of Hartman. And she tells Sorrells that she's by an old barn. And, and he's like, all right, I'll come get you.
It's like, oh, the old barn. Only one of those around here. But...
there probably isn't a lot of old maybe also he also probably knows the story. He's like, well, what bar did Hartman take her to? No, barn.
Yeah. We're gonna old again.
Hartman pulls her out of the car and takes her and hangs her up she throws her down and he shows her Jackson, who's hung up on some chains, and he reveals. You guys ready for this big reveal? This is a big reveal, especially at this point in the story. At least that's the way he delivers the line, like it's supposed to be a reveal that we're supposed to care about when it's so obvious at this point. He's actually Jedediah Sawyer, and you're like, I thought it was Lizzie.
Yeah.
Then we head to Sorrells, who's arriving at the Sawyer house, and he's telling Verna where Jed is. Drayton comes up and, stabs him. And then Drayton and Nubbins throw him in to be killed and eaten by the pigs. So that's pretty cool. They're feeding the pigs.
Yeah.
That they apparently lose all of in the next 8 years, which it seems like they're doing a pretty good job keeping these pigs alive. They kept them alive for the last 10 years because there was a pig thief who stole pigs from them 10 years ago. But in the next 8 years, they are no longer able to keep farming pigs, apparently. Because there are no pigs in the 1973 part of the timeline that came out in 1974.
Coyotes.
Yes, the coyotes.
Did it.
Or a lot more pig thieves.
The town is rife with pig thieves. Yeah.
Feral hogs, and they didn't have an AR-15 to kill all those hogs in a couple seconds.
Yeah.
I
got the reference.
Yeah, it was a meme. It's that weird Facebook post, I think it was. Might have been a tweet. But yeah, Drayton already did that. They throw him in. Then Verna, Drayton, and Nubbins, they head off to the barn. So, yeah. Then we cut to the barn, and Verna comes in alone with a chainsaw. And Hartman, he drops Jed into the hole from the beginning. Whoa, how apropos.
Justice.
Yeah, this movie's all about justice. But but not, because actually Verna and her family did nothing wrong. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah.
She's got a lawyer, Austin.
Huh?
She's going through the system.
She is.
She's being peaceful.
But, you know, there's also the fact that, like, this is also, like, a direct prequel to the last movie where they, like, make the whole movie be about, can you believe this mob justice that killed this evil family? You know, this mob justice who are apparently, as we find out in this movie, coming after them because they killed that guy's sister. Like, it's even more understandable why they were coming specifically for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, you know. Also, I think the extra bit of, like, reasoning for why they might have been there specifically is apparently the Ted, according to the screenwriter, not the credits or the movie itself, but the screenwriter's intention was for Ted to be a Hardesty. So he was like the father or uncle of Sally and what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Franklin from the original. So.
Oh yeah, I read that.
Yeah, it's all connected. Totally. And they didn't just add that just to add it. He didn't just say that years later to say it. It was totally obvious in the script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then after that, the Sawyer boys, Drayton and Nubbins, they pop up in masks, so you don't know which one's which, because for reasons. And they distract. One of them distracts Hartman, and then the other knocks him out. Then they help out Jed out of the hole, and Verna stitches his face back up. And puts this nice little leather strap, like apparatus, kind of like a muzzle-looking thing on him to hold his face together while the stitches heal. How nice. He's got a Leatherface now. Then Lizzie wakes up, and she's about to escape from now the house. They got moved to the house, apparently. Because, you know, we all love the house. Even though I don't feel like this movie did as good of a job recreating the house as 3D did. That was one of the things we really praised about 3D. Like, it looked exactly like the original house. This one doesn't, but it's supposed to be. But hey, it happens.
I did like that there was fewer bones in this one, though. So it was just kind of like, this is before they had all the other bones.
Maybe. Okay. Oh, all right.
That was something I noticed anyway.
That's fair.
Building up the bone collection.
They're just starting their bone room. They've only killed a bunch of people, not a lot of people. They're about to escape. She's about to escape, but then she's stopped by Hartman, who's asking for her help. And even after she asks him, like, what would have you done to me? And he's like, I don't know. She still helps him.
Yeah. She's the only redeemable character.
Yeah, I guess Lizzie is the best character in the story. Like, she is the nicest, most good-hearted person in the movie. So she helps him up, and they walk past a bone room, and they almost make it out the front door when they're stopped by Drayton and Nubbins. Then Verna, she calls for Jed, who comes in and kills Hartman with some repeated swipes of the chainsaw. First, like, cuts his wrists before, like, mulching his stomach. In an awesome kill. It is.
I liked it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Looked like it hurt.
Yeah, best kill of the movie for sure. We don't give out awards for best kill, but I will say this one would be it.
Yeah. Mm.
But yeah, it's cool. It's a cool kill. That's really all that happens there. And Lizzie screams because, you know,
it's opportune.
She loved Jackson because of the, you know, moonshine. So this is heartbreaking to see him be evil. Lizzie then is able to escape, though, and she runs out the door, and we get our final girl chased through the woods by a chainsaw-wielding
psychopath.
Jedediah Sawyer. He's not Leatherface yet. That's at the end of the movie when he makes the mask. So just Jedediah Sawyer.
Transformation.
Yeah. But it's the scene. It's the scene that's in every one of the movies. Woo!
I liked when he turned the chainsaw off so he could hear her better. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Not before.
Also, to change this one up, this time Nubbins and Drayton are also looking for her, helping him. And Leatherface does eventually catch her after she gets caught in a bear trap. She tries to, convince him to not do this, while Verna also tries to convince him to kill her. When Lizzie calls Verna crazy, he cuts off Lizzie's head, which is heartbreaking because they shared the moonshine together.
That scene should have devastated me for both her and for him. Because that should have been the moment where you're just like, he's completely gone. But it just did nothing.
Well, see...
At least for me.
No, you're right. You're right. But it's because we were interpreting them...
Interpretatifying.
We were not understanding the meaning they were going for. The Saw is family. That is the moral of all the movies, even though it is a line from 2, a Saw in 3, and not canon in anything else. The Saw is family. Don't insult his mom, who he didn't even realize was his mom until 5 minutes ago.
Well, that's certainly part of it, right? I mean, we get that. That's kind of his sore spot when Ike brings it up, is him not knowing who his mom is, and have this reuniting come about. It seems like his mom, unlocked the memory that the drugs were hiding, and they're like, "Oh, your mom's crazy." I mean, I think the fact that he had been separated from his mom for so long is part of, why it was such a swift decision for him.
Yeah, no. But the problem is, his mom doesn't even exist in the movie that follows directly after this, because she doesn't matter to the family.
That's kind of the problem. This isn't the movie's fault, but that's kind of the problem with any kind of prequel.
Yeah.
Is the original is cool because you don't know the backstory, and then when you show the backstory, it's like, the backstory's not that cool. It's kind of cooler if you imagine it.
Yeah. And
then they give us the backstory, and it's not that good.
I also feel like this movie, and pretty much the whole franchise, undermines why I loved Leatherface in the first movie. Is, as we established in that episode, Leatherface was a victim. Leatherface isn't a victim in this movie. He chooses to kill Lizzie. Like, it's all like, he's not like being forced to kill her because if not, Verna's gonna beat him or something. Like, he is in the next 8 years, he's going to develop like severe special needs and apparently, I
think the implication is it happens after he gets dropped down, but they don't make it clear enough in the movie. But
what else could it be, right? Like,
yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
I think the better version of this movie has less of Ike and Clarice.
We know.
And has more of developing. Yeah. I think this movie, this might be a controversial take, because I know a lot of people don't like the movie I'm about to reference, but I think this movie should have been more like Ang Lee's Hulk, which is a good movie, by the way. I know a lot of people don't like it, but that's a good movie.
All right. You're going to explain like the themes of Ang Lee's Hulk, because no one remembers Ang Lee's Hulk. So if you want to explain why you think it should be like that, maybe tell us why.
I just remember that it had weird comic panels in the movie.
The thing about Ang Lee's Hulk is it's all about how he's actively trying not to turn into this monster. And he sees himself turning into this monster, he's turning into his father, essentially. You should rewatch that movie, by the way. Really good.
Dude, sure.
Yeah. But but the whole movie is him trying not to turn into this thing, but he kind of likes it when he turns into the monster. And I think a better version of this movie would have had him show more fits of rage like that and then feel bad for it. And then the end of the movie, when you have that turn, just be like, he's just gone. Like, he is fully the monster now.
Out of regret.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Yeah, that's some.
And then it's like the end of the movie is kind of.
It sounds nice.
Yeah, it's like the end of the movie could have been this is just the point of there's no turning back now. He is just fully Leatherface now.
Would have had some sort of impact on like the ending that we got, where it's just like,
Exactly.
I feel like my problem with that interpretation would also be my same problem I have with this interpretation is Leatherface was only kind of a monster. Like that's like in that first movie, I feel like people forget like Leatherface was like an abused victim who was defending his home because he knew he'd get beat if he didn't. And like that's my problem with any like pretty much any depiction of Leatherface since the original is like they've thought, oh, Leatherface is a monster with a chainsaw. It's like, yes, but also no. Like he was such a like well-developed character. I know, crazy that like they made a great movie and that's why it spawned all this. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I think what you're pitching would be way better than what we got here, but I still think I wouldn't like it because like Leatherface is supposed to be a victim that's pushed into this, not something that he ever likes.
Well, I think, but if it's one of those things where he's accepted that this is what he has to be, rather than this is just whereas I feel like this movie, the conclusion is just kind of like this is just what he is, rather than him having to accept this is what I have to be.
That's okay. All right. You've won me over on your imaginary pitch that will never get made. Sadly, I mean, we'll have we're not getting that. What the franchise is actually going to do is just reboot again because that's all they know how to do.
Yeah.
But let's end. We have one last scene actually because you'd think it ends with the cutting off the head, but no, there is like one last scene. We get a couple quick shots of like all the family members doing their family thing. Verna's burning some clothes. Nubbins and Drayton are feeding the pigs some corpse meat. And Grandpa's taking a nap because, Grandpa needs to be, like, pretty much dead now in these, like, 10 years that happened since then. Because I guess he still has 8 more years, but still. He needs to not be, like, doing anything special here because he needs to have a drastic drop-off.
He's getting ready to be in a vegetative state for the next 10 years.
Yeah. And then we cut downstairs because now this movie does have a basement. I don't remember if it was Chris Prime or Isaiah who said last week that they thought that Leatherface was in his basement, which he doesn't have a basement in the original or in the last movie, but he does have a basement in this movie he works in.
Hey, there we go.
He is in a basement now, and he is sewing himself a skin mask made partially out of Lizzie's
face, right?
Yeah. He also pretties it up a little bit. He puts some lipstick on it. Gotta make the face pretty. And then he, I guess, officially becomes Leatherface, and the movie ends. He breaks a mirror. He's so angry at what he sees, but also likes it because it's pretty. Yeah. Then we go to the credits, and there's no post-credit scene, so the movie's over. So now, time for final thoughts. And Chris?
All right.
No, I'm
awesome.
kidding. I have a little more to say than that. This is one of those movies that, on a first viewing, I thought my opinions were going to be different when I came here. But after discussing this movie, I do have more negative thoughts on it than I did initially watching it. When I initially watched this movie, my thoughts were, hey, it was kind of fun at times, and, at least they did something different. I feel like that is my biggest complaint about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise for the most part is it's just the same movie, like with the same shots even over and over again. And like, here's the thing, that might be hypocritical, and it might be to some people who are like, oh, you liked most of the Friday the 13th movies, and those are all the same movie, and you're kind of right. But I don't know, just these movies just felt so much like they were telling the exact same story, but pretending they were different. Like each one of these movies felt like it was like we're telling a different story now. But then I'm like, but it's just kids dying again. All right. And most of them weren't great. But this one I actually really liked when I first watched it because I was like, hey, it did something different. It was like a weird adventure road trip movie. And I did kind of like it. I still think it's not terrible. I don't hate this movie. I could watch it again and not hate myself for it. But after discussing it and really breaking down all of what happened, I'm willing to admit that my opinions have changed somewhat. I like it less now, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But yeah, it's there. I like that it's different. but also it doesn't do a great job at what it's trying to do that's different. So,
Mm-hmm.
Chris.
Picking up where Austin left off, it tries to do something different and doesn't do a great job in that it is an origin story. But the best part of this movie is also the worst part of this movie. And in that it is like very fast paced and it doesn't really. There's no developing of characters. It's just thing happens and then thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then thing happens with like little bouts of exposition in between. This movie really felt like it wanted to be an homage to Natural Born Killers more than it wanted to be a Texas Chainsaw movie, which I enjoyed Natural Born Killers, but like it didn't do that well. It was just we watched Ike and Clarice kill a bunch of people. Oh, and then in between, Jackson became Leatherface. The end. That movie wasn't the hardest Texas Chainsaw movie to watch, but yeah, definitely would. Well, actually, no, that's not true because we did get uh, a dead corpse harmonica scene. Yeah, I take it back. This was the hardest movie to watch. Would not recommend it to anyone. Isaiah?
We agreed to never mention that
Yeah,
again.
man.
I'm just saying this is the second time one of you has brought it up after we said we will never bring up the scene again.
So, I think what's really central to this movie is the dead harmonica scene. I'd like to unpack it a little bit more. No, I have to agree that we need to praise the originality of the story, especially compared to all the other movies in the franchise before. I mean, except for the original, which is original. I really appreciate that about this movie, is that it had this is a creative storyline, and it wasn't the same hackneyed stuff we've been fed for like the past however many movies. So, got to give a thumbs up for that. And the twist was good. That was an effective plot twist at the end, I have to admit, especially since I did not watch the video. So, in terms of, I mean, me and Austin mostly agreeing in our assessments of the movie, but I feel like I had a pure experience for the movie, having been totally innocent of the whole plot twist when I started it. But yeah, I mean, the flaws y'all are bringing up are valid, especially Chris number two's point about failing to really develop the connection between, our not quite love interest. That can be a big deal. But then the more we talked about it, the more I realized, like, well, I mean, it's not like the relationship really faltered. It never really took off. You get the illusion that it could because we're seeing all this through the eyes of Jed, and really not so much through the eyes of Lizzie. But when we take a look at it from her perspective, she's just a hostage, So it makes sense to not really invest that much into this romance that never really happens because it doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. That wasn't really a goal that the movie missed, I don't think. But yeah, nonetheless, I guess the quality of the movie depends on how much you're willing to believe in the quick change to Leatherface. Personally, I do think it's interesting to consider that the Leatherface we've gotten to know so far was once a normal guy that could talk and reason and not be constantly cowering or alternately violent. That's interesting. I like the effect that Chris number two described about backstories and origin stories kind of sucking the coolness out of the original. I didn't really get that here, and I can't really put my finger on why, because it would make sense. I can totally understand if other people got that effect. Like, I just want the old Leatherface where I don't really know what his story is, and I can get that. I think it's interesting to consider. Thinking about, like, the guy behind this mask, where we're actually seeing him, we're hearing dialogue from him that He's like the main character of this movie. That's kind of a cool experiment. But yeah, I can't call it a great movie because a week later I did forget quite a bit of it. Just got to admit that. I just want to be gentler on it than I think other members of the podcast are right now. So
Yeah, I mean, I think with regards to origin stories, I like the idea of doing origin stories. I just think this one isn't well executed enough. That was part of the thing that frustrated me about this movie is I think with a couple of rewrites, this could have been a really good movie. And just the one we got, everything is just half baked. It feels like the script was maybe a little rushed or something.
They needed 3 more writers.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that might have actually helped the movie.
Honestly, if there was a second pass, it very well might have been better.
Yeah, I just think the script we got was kind of lacking in a lot of areas. Like I said with the Jackson stuff, I wanted to see more from him. Because I think the story really hinges on him, but I think they got kind of caught up in, we want to do this twist ending, so we don't want to show our cards too soon.
yeah,
And I also liked that they didn't have a lot of, like, necessarily romantic chemistry. Jackson and Lizzie. I liked that they didn't. I would have liked it if they had just become friends. Not necessarily been romantic, just they became close through the movie. I think that would have been a really bold move that I don't think this movie was brave enough to try. Though I will say, I did like that they tried something new. That was something I appreciated, especially coming off of 3D. I appreciated that this movie was trying new things, and I think it's way better than 3D, to be clear. I think the movie's okay. I was frustrated by it because I think it was an okay movie that could have been a great movie. So
I'd just like to add one more thing to wrap up my thoughts.
Fair.
Because something that Austin said, and his complaints with like Leatherface in this origin versus like how he's supposed to be 10 years from now or whatever.
8 years, not even.
Or 4 years, right?
It's 8. This is
It's 8.
65.
8
Next will
years
be
from
73.
And like the mental state, the differences between the two. I think the only way to have done it justice is to have this not be like a prequel to 3D, and have it be like a standalone where he does come from a broken family, but like it's a broken family, and he like we see that history of abuse and like that terrible home that he grows up in, and then maybe he gets separated, and then he's like forced back into that family and has to like obey their commands to like survive.
mm-hmm.
And then I think I like having that Leatherface become who he is would be a lot more believable. But also, kind of struggling with that relationship that he had with Lizzie and her sanity, kind of combating the insanity of his own broken family. I feel like would have been the ideal origin story, as opposed to, he's got a loving family that just happens to be people who murder people all the time.
That's kind of the problem with a lot of the movies in this franchise is it's the town is who's the real monster,
It is the family of serial killing cannibals.
Yeah.
For anyone who was questioning that.
Maybe the town is the real monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to add in one last complaint.
Go for it.
Something that I kind of hinted at, but I feel like I really want to harp on here because I kind of hinted at the beginning is there's no way, like forgetting the fact like the character change, like in the way his personality is, there's no way for like half of like these characters to be who they're supposed to be in 8 years. Specifically Leatherface, like just like the physical transformation is like yes possible, but pretty unlikely. especially with like you look at like all these other characters who are like super skinny, like so it seems like the family for the most part keeps people skinny, but somehow he gets kind of fat by the next movie, even though he was kind of jacked in this movie. And then the actor they got to play Drayton was just horribly cast in the sense of the way he looked. He looked nothing like Jim Siedow. Like he looks more like knockoff Matthew McConaughey. Like if he was playing young Vilmer, sure, but he's not, because that movie doesn't exist, thankfully, in any other continuity. But yeah, I don't know. It's a big plan. It's like just like you. This is supposed to be 8 years from now, and this guy is supposed to grow up in 8 years to be like 50-year-old Jim Siedow, like, or however old he was in that movie. But like he seems a lot older and doesn't look anything like him, or really act like him, because even though this movie wants to go, hey, the first one matters, it doesn't with the way they portray these characters.
No.
And I think that could be acceptable if this was a better movie.
Yeah.
I'm willing to ignore all of that
overlook
if it's a good movie.
Continuity errors, yeah.
Yeah. But it's not a good enough movie for that.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that's basically it. If you liked this podcast, give it a 5-star review on any podcast app, Spotify, Google, Apple. We're on all of them. If we liked it on YouTube, subscribe. Also, if you want to support us directly, patreon.com/horrorboys. But before I, say goodbye and say what we're going to watch next week, which, I mean, it's pretty obvious it's the next Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. I mean, but yeah. But we have an announcement that we've joked about, twice now, but it's something we got to announce. This is Isaiah's last podcast with us for now. I like to look at this as a goodbye. Not a goodbye. No, that's wrong. I like to look at this as a see you later, not a goodbye.
Permanent farewell.
Yeah. We are killing him for leaving. But yeah, Isaiah is going to be stepping away. And I want to just thank him for being here, first off. Like, I mean, this podcast wouldn't exist without Isaiah. Like, I mean, me and Chris mostly me, but Chris was on board from day one, had this idea to do this podcast, but we from day one were like, we do enough content that's just the two of us. We know we need a third voice on this project. And I reached out to a lot of people. Isaiah was not the first one I reached out to because he doesn't have social media, and therefore I forgot he existed. So I reached out to a lot of other friends first, and they all told me no. And then I was like, just randomly saw Isaiah's name on like a group messaging app and was like, Isaiah might like horror movies. And then he was a great third person on this. He brought a voice that neither me or Chris could have brought. He won't admit it, but he is far more intellectual than either of us. He brought a different style of like discussion about it. He also has much lower standards on horror movies, so he was able to praise movies that me and Chris didn't like. But I love him, and I'm going to miss him. We're still gonna talk occasionally, I'm sure.
I'll never see him again.
I will say that I'm not letting him go away forever. Whenever he finishes college, I guess I'll announce it here for you. I mean, I'll let you talk too after I praise you for a little bit, if you want to say goodbye or anything. But first, I'll just finish. Like, I'm not letting him go away forever. I plan on bringing him back next summer for Boys' Choice. He will be back for at least his Boys' Choice. I don't know if I'm going to make him come back for 4 weeks, but I'm going to make him come back for 1 week for sure. He will be back next summer for at least 1 week. We'll make it work. I'll figure out schedules. We'll make it happen. Also, there's I want to try to bring back the summer after that. And, whenever he finishes, I'm making him come back. I will find a way. I will get him back on here full time, and we'll be a 4-person podcast. Because it's not like I'm going to kick other Chris out then. Sorry, you were just here while he was gone. But yeah, Isaiah, if you want to say anything, I guess also if Chris you want to say anything about Isaiah, you also can after Isaiah talks. Also, other Chris, if you want to say something about the man you met today, you can.
Dude, yeah, Chris Glass seems very cool. He's a drummist, but. Yeah, I'm going back to school, and that's the only reason that I had to say goodbye to this podcast. It has been a ton of fun. I've really dug it. Watched all the movies and everything that I probably wouldn't, many of which I would have gotten into without it. So, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, the only reason I have to get away from it is because I've got like 6 minutes a day of free time. Now that I'm getting back in school, along with work and everything else, and so that's really the only reason. But I mean, what can I say? Like, I've really enjoyed it, and I don't know. I don't even know what to say to all the nice things Austin just said. So, I love y'all back, and I shall return for at the summer at least. So.
All right. Well, I've been Austin, joined by Chris, Isaiah, and Chris. And we'll be back next week. Well, not Isaiah, just because we just mentioned the whole thing. Pay attention to the podcast, gosh. Next week, we'll be back discussing the last movie in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. But bye!
Bye.
Bye.